Hey guys, Nathan from Arms of Ilum here. One of the things I've found since I started doing these custom saber builds is that there are sometimes sabers that are just really tough to ship back to their owners. Whether it's because the hilt's really cool or the install turns out just almost perfectly, got some great sound fonts on there that seem to really work well with the lighting effects. I don't know what it is, but sometimes I run into builds that I just don't want to ship back. Obviously I ultimately do, but hey, it is tough. This is one of those builds, and we are going to be taking a closer look at this Rey Jedi Training Hasbro Force FX lightsaber. Wow, it's a mouthful. Okay, so as I said in the opening, this is the Hasbro Force FX Rey Jedi Training lightsaber that I just completed for Brad. Like any Force FX conversions, this thing really starts out with the conversion kit from the custom saber shop here at the top. I went ahead and painted that black in all the appropriate places. And this is the same conversion kit that works in the Luke Graflex style or the A New Hope style lightsaber that was released not all that long ago. And basically the this Rey model has taken over for it in the lineup. This is the newest lightsaber that Hasbro has come out with in the Black Series lineup. However, they do have a First Order Stormtrooper baton that's out there now, which I anticipate will probably be a little bit less popular than the lightsabers. I know I'm certainly not that excited about it. Not nearly as excited for that as I was this Rey lightsaber, even though I don't own one right now. So aside from that conversion kit, inside there we have a Tri-Cree blue, royal blue, white. And that allows us to create some really, I guess you could call it screen accurate colors for especially the Force Awakens. So really nice medium blue that we're able to get by combining that royal blue and the lighter regular blue from Cree. Then that white is layered on top for a nice bright flash on clash. The other thing that we did was we replaced the standard glass eye and red button with replacements from the Graflex shop, if I remember correctly. Brad supplied these to me, so I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe they did come from the Graflex shop. And you can see you've got that bright red machined aluminum button, which stands in stark contrast to the I guess maybe you could say the more correct, although less visually appealing plastic button that you'll find like with the Graflex 2.5 kits and so on and so forth. Then on the other side, the glass eye is really just a faux glass eye. It's not shine through or glass really at all. It's just a machined piece, but it does improve the look of the saber. Kind of brings up the overall quality and feel because these are very hefty metal buttons or faux buttons that really do add to the overall look and feel of this saber. The other thing that Brad did was he supplied me with an extra red button greebly here, and all I need to do is unscrew the glass eye, screw this bad boy in its place, and now Brad has a pretty decent, not bad, replica of the Empire Strikes Back Graflex. There are some small differences, namely the type of D-ring that's on the pommel here. It's washing out in the camera a little bit, but other than that, I mean, it's a pretty solid overall, easy conversion from the Force Awakens / The Last Jedi to a serviceable ESB replica hilt. So very cool to have that flexibility. And when I get to talking about the sound fonts in just a little bit, you'll see why that's important. Let's go ahead and replace that glass eye though. Or I should say reattach that glass eye, because that's really the true way to keep this thing. Moving on back, we have what looks to be the normal switch section, but there are some changes here. Underneath all of that is a prototype of my new 3D printed momentary tactile switch holder for these Graflex style Force FX lightsabers. You can't see it here, but if you look at it from an angle, you can kind of see the silvery plastic print right there. And this uses a micro-sized tactile switch, very, very small, very slim, fits very nicely in there. This is a prototype, as I mentioned, though. It is not quite ready to go into production, but when it does, it will be available on my Shapeways shop. I just have to make a few more modifications to make the installs a little bit easier using this piece. Moving on back, let's go ahead and open up the Saber. It's done just by unscrewing the pommel. One thing you'll note about this that's different from my Vader lightsabers is I did not drill and tap anywhere near the pommel for chassis retention. That's because whereas the Vader has those ridges that make it really, really easy to hide a set screw, this doesn't have anything like that. And so if I was going to drill into the hilt, it would be pretty obvious, and I didn't want to do that for Brad. I wouldn't want to do that for anybody else, and I wouldn't want it for myself. So didn't do that active style retention, but rather opted for a couple of passive options that I'll show you right now. The first thing is, to make the chassis easier to remove, I added just a ribbon that fits nicely into the grooves of the chassis on each side there. It's nice and out of the way. It's secured using high strength Gorilla double-sided tape, so it's not going anywhere. And it doesn't interfere with the speaker. It makes removing the chassis really easy. You can then see that I've got a little bit of a Velcro shim there to make sure that everything fits in nice and tight. This chassis, I've noticed, is a little bit loose in some hilts. Hasbro isn't exactly super consistent when it comes to the inner diameter of these. I know that's the bane of the custom saber shop's existence when it comes to these conversion kits, because some of them fit really, really tightly, some of them slide right in. There's just a lot of inconsistency when it comes to the inside of these hilts. Couple that with the fact that I've recently upgraded my 3D printer to the Creality CR10, which is a huge upgrade over my old Monoprice unit, and you can just see that a smoother print just slides right in and out very easily. So we might have to make some changes to this design in the near future, but for now, just a little bit of Velcro up there holds things in place, no problem at all. Now with all of this out, you can see the inside of all of it is the Nano Biscotte version 4. I've been including these with most of my builds, and I just, honestly guys, I love the Nano Biscotte version 4 much more than the version 3 that I used to use for these builds. It's just, the sensitivity for swings and clashes is just spot on. Sometimes in certain hilts it requires a little bit of adjustment, but it's not a whole lot. It really is a nice board. It's paired with a 28mm bass speaker from Saber Essentials. I'm now using Saber Essential speakers instead of the Vico style 28mm bass speakers that I used to use because these things are just a lot better, and now that the Custom Saber shop carries them, it's a no-brainer. I can have them in less than a week, whereas I used to have to wait a couple weeks to get them from Adrian over in Malaysia. So, huge upgrade. Much louder, although I do not run these at full power because, as Adrian has noted and as the Custom Saber shop warns, if you run these speakers at full power, because the impedance in them is at 4 ohm rather than the 8 ohm on the Vicos, you might blow them out. They're just a lot more powerful. So I toned down the volume on the SD card to level 3 of 4, and it's still on par with the Vico in terms of loudness, but it is a much clearer sound. So overall, just a massive win for buyers, really anybody using these speakers. I'm so glad that the Custom Saber shop is finally carrying them. Then the last couple pieces here, it's a Trustfire 18650 lithium-ion battery. It has 2400 milliamp hours. Not a whole lot to say about it, just a good solid basic battery right there. And then the 12mm panel mount recharge port that I included in all of these builds. Popping everything back in is super simple. Just slide it in, give it a little push, and then twist the pommel. Whoop, if I can avoid cross-threading it here. Twist that pommel right back on. As you can tell, guys, this is a really, really cool build, but that's not all. let's go ahead and take a look at those sound fonts that I loaded. Before we take a look at these sound fonts, or take a listen I should say, let's go ahead and add a blade. Here we have a cut down version of the Ultra Saber's mid-grade blade. It's the same type of blade that I'll include with the Saber when I ship it. So it's a nice representation for you guys who are watching this at home of what the Sabers look like when customers receive them and such. I try to use this same blade when I can, or when I remember to, I should say, to just demonstrate these, because it is basically what is delivered with the lightsaber. Now, before I do that, I almost forgot. One of the really nice things about using these additional greeblies from the Graflex shop is that this red button here actually serves as our blade retention screw. It protrudes just a hair into that blade socket, and I'm talking about just a hair, just barely into that blade socket, giving us just enough bite into that blade for solid retention. The nice thing about that is that we don't have to add any other set screws or anything that doesn't look right on this Saber anywhere else for blade retention. We can just use that piece, and that's all we need. And because it's got that nice and fat knurled head on it, it's really, really easy to just twist it, tighten it back down, and you're ready to rock. So let's go ahead and loosen it up, and then all we have to do is drop that blade in there. And one of the things about these conversion kits is the blades tend to be very, very tight. This one actually slides in relatively easily, but it's nice from one respect because you're not going to have to worry about blades sliding out, but it's also unfortunate because sometimes I run into some blades that simply will not fit. But because it does fit so nicely into this hilt, all we have to do now is just tighten down the button just a little bit, and it's not going anywhere. That thing is snug in there, and everything looks perfectly fine at the front of the Saber. Really, really nice design as far as the screw goes, and the conversion kit there. The thing just fits together perfectly. Alright, so let's talk about the fonts. The first font you're going to hear is the Last Graflex. It is a Last Jedi inspired font from Novastar, and it's really, really nice, unique Graflex style font that we haven't really heard up until, well, The Last Jedi came out, because we're starting to hear a lot more aggressive sounds from this Saber in the film, so I'm kind of liking what Disney's doing with those sound effects, even if they're not quite the same as the original trilogy. It allows me to add some serious variety on these Sabers. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Now, because I was just playing with this Saber, you didn't get that boot sound. The boot and we'll work our way back to it so you can hear it maybe at the end, but the boot is just a small sample of Rey's theme, so very, very appropriate for the Saber and for the font. With this font, what I did was I try to do different color effects or different lighting effects for every font bank on a Saber to give it a little bit of variety. This Saber, of all the ones I've done, probably has the most variety, simply because I've been able to play with a lot of different shades of blue, because this Saber, throughout all the movies, has changed shades of blue more than really any other Saber. We've seen it a lot, and so every movie you get just a little bit different shade of blue, and it allows us to do some really cool things. With this one, we've got the medium blue, and what it really is, it's a full power on both of the blue dice, and then the white is piped in for just a hair to lighten it up. Overall, it looks a lot like the blue that you would see in The Force Awakens. We've got a little bit more flicker here than you're probably used to seeing with a Graflex style Saber, but there's a reason for that. Let's go ahead and swing it around and you'll see why I did that. Notice that these slashes, these swings, they're much more aggressive than we're used to hearing with the Graflex. I mean, if I didn't know better, if somebody just handed me this font and I didn't hear the boot, and I didn't hear that, really the boot and that power on sound, which is fairly unique as well, I probably would think this was a dark side font. Couple that with those angrier sounding clashes, and I'll be honest, it sounds kind of Sithy, but I really like it because it really brings out the aggression that Rey had, especially in that final duel in The Force Awakens on Starkiller Base. When it comes to the flash on clash with this one, I have a very brief, very dramatic flash. I pull out almost all of the blue, and so it's basically just a pure white. The reason for that was because that duel in the movie took place at night. The flashes, the clashes, I should say, between Kylo Ren's Saber and Rey's are very dramatic. Unfortunately, because I don't have a red dye in here, I can't replicate the purpley flash that you get with those. So I'm stuck with the white. But that's alright because we're able to get that emotional impact of the very dramatic, bright flash on clash with this saber. Let's go ahead and power it off and check out the next font. Now, not to spoil the surprise or anything, but for the next font, I think we should take off the glass eye. The faux glass eye, I should say. Let's pop on another red button. That's right, that's because the next font is Bespin 2 from Mad Cow. Now you've got that nice Bespin carbonite chamber sound effect, or what have you. But powering it on, here I don't pipe in any of the white. This is a standard medium blue blade with very little, very subtle flicker. That's to replicate the look from the original trilogy where you didn't quite have those real flickery, I don't think that's a word. But you don't have the flicker as much flicker in the blades. They're a little more static, so here you have it. Honestly, this color looks, to my eye, and I know the colors even in the original trilogy films changed a little bit over time, as you had the special edition, you had the originals, and everything in between. So the colors changed a little bit. This looks like one of the later special edition style, more saturated looks for the Empire Strikes Back style Graflex. But here you can see a more traditional swing sound. You've got the flutter that we're used to hearing with the original trilogy style sabers, and it's a longer swing rather than the short aggressive style swings that we just heard. For the flash on clash, it's not quite as dramatic in that it's a longer flash rather than the short abrupt ones that we had previously. And this time I'm just layering it over the top of the blue for a different look. Really, that's all there is to it. Power that down and check out our final font. The last font is just the standard dark meat font. When originally, I guess, when Brad had reached out to me, he wanted me to use the light meat. He then saw one of my other videos where I kind of hated on light meat. I don't love that font at all. It's just really underwhelming. The swings are overpowered by the hums, so it's not my favorite. So he then reached out to me and asked for dark meat, which I think is a solid choice, even for what is a light side saber, because like I said, Disney has kind of been taking the Graflex sound effects to a more aggressive tone overall, kind of to match what we've seen from Rey's combat style. So it works with this. Hey, but before we do that, let's go on, and this is probably getting old for you guys, but I'm kind of having fun with it. So let's add the faux glass eye back in place. Alright, let's go on. It's the standard boot for dark meat. And this is a very different look. I don't think that the camera's picking this up well at all. So I'm going to step around the table here and show you guys. With this one, I piped in a ton of the white. We're talking about almost 50% power on that white to go with the full power of the blue. And what this does is produces a very light blue blade. The reason I did that was, if you guys, I mean, come on, you've all seen The Last Jedi. Who am I kidding? But in that film, the saber does have a very, very bright white core with just a little bit of a blue aura around that. So You can't quite replicate that with one of these sabers, but you can kind of get the feel. And so that's what I did with this. This is the lightest blue blade I've ever done, and it's very, very bright, and I love the way it looks. It makes me want to do one like this for myself. So fortunately, I have a Luke style Force FX Saber sitting in the other room, and it will probably get this treatment at some point. Let's go ahead and swing it around. You guys have heard this before if you've seen my other videos. This is not a new sound effect, or new sound font for you guys, but I think it goes really well with this saber. The flash on clash is a little bit less dramatic with this guy, simply because I've got basically everything on right now anyway, so I can't exactly like make the white a whole lot more powerful than it already is. But if you're in a dark room, it's still quite pronounced, and I didn't shorten it up as much as I did for the first font, the last Graphics, simply for that very reason, so that you can at least see a little bit more of it when the effect triggers. I think you guys can really see, just up against my backdrop, how light in color this is. I love it. Love the way it turned out. I'll let you hear the boot sound for the last Graphics real quick before we close things up. As always, in between each font we have the mute on the go, which allows us to have the same visual effects without the sound of the preceding font, I should say. So you'll get the same visuals as the font that comes before it, but none of the sound. Go on to the last Graphics. And there you have it. There's Rey's theme. So overall, probably one of my favorite sabers I've ever done, simply because there's just so much variety between each font. Just so many options when it comes to setting this saber up just how you want it. So I hope, Brad, that you enjoy this. Honestly, if I were you, I would have a whole lot of difficulty picking any one of these fonts, but that's the great thing about having both the glass eye and the red button. You can switch back and forth whenever you please. Alright, so if you guys have any questions about this saber, go ahead and post those in the comments. If you like this and want to see more, I've always got more Saber and Star Wars related content coming, so be sure to subscribe, give this video a like, share it with your friends, and follow Arms of Ilum over on Instagram and Facebook. I try to keep up with those, keep you guys in the loop, what's going on around here and what sabers are coming up. Thanks for watching, guys.